Today we are going to talk about Aristotle's metaphysics. Metaphysics is the queen of the sciences, according to Aristotle. It's the most important science. And Aristotle defines metaphysics as the science of being as being. So the question is, what does that mean? What is the meaning of being as being? And the answer is that it is the study of the existence of everything that exists. So what are things and how is it possible for them to be the way they are? Aristotle is the last member of a long tradition. And he is reacting in his metaphysics especially to Plato. So Aristotle is the most important pupil of Plato. He was born in 384 BC. And at the age of 17, he came to Athens to become a member of Plato's academy. And he was a student of Plato for 20 years, from 367 to 347 BC. Then when Plato died, he left Athens for a time and returned to found his own school in Athens in 335 BC. He returned in 335. 335. And he continued as head of the Lyceum, his own school, the Lyceum, until 323 BC. Then in 323 BC, Alexander the Great died. And Aristotle had been the teacher of Alexander the Great. against everyone connected with Alexander the Great, who took their independence from them.
Athens მოსახლეობა ყველა მისნაობლე იყო მის ალექსანდრეს მიმართ აფილიაცია ჰქონდა, რადგან მან ათენის მოსახლეობას თავისუფლება წაართვა.
And Aristotle had to leave Athens quickly, and he went to a nearby island.
არისტოტელეს მოუხდა დატოვება ათენის ამ ძის გამო და მახლობელ კუნძულზე გადავიდეს.
The island of Euboea, and died there 1 year later in 322. Now, when Aristotle died, his published works were all lost, which is something very strange.
არისტოტელეს გარდაცვალებასთან ერთად მისი შრომები თითქმის გაუჩინარდა, რაც ძალიან უცნაური იყო.
So the books we have today of Aristotle are notes, either the notes of Aristotle himself, or, as I think, the notes taken by his students.
Polisignam რაც ჩვენ დღეს გვაქვს არის შენიშვნები და კომენტარები დაწერილი უკვე არისტოტელეს ან მისი მოწაფეების მიერ.
Okay, but this is a personal theory. But I think he taught his class in such a way that the students could write every word, and so the notes would be the same as what the teacher was saying.
ეს ჩემი პირადი თეორია არის, მაგრამ ვფიქრობ, რომ ის როდი როდესაც ასწავლიდა, სტუდენტები აკეთებდნენ ჩანაწერებს და ამიტომ ვფიქრობ, რომ ის ზუსტად ემთხვეოდა ჩანაწერები იმას, რაც არისტოტელე საუბრობს.
So what we have today are 14 books of metaphysics of Aristotle.
რაც ჩვენ დღეს გვაქვს არის 14 წიგნი არისტოტელეს მეტაფიზიკის.
But these books are not a unity. The works of Aristotle were lost, the published works were lost, and so the notes were edited in the 1st century BC. And so we have different collections of notes put together to make one work of metaphysics, but it's not a unity.
ჩვენ გვაქვს რაღაცა კრებული ამ კომენტარების, რომელიც ერთ შრომად შეიკრება, მაგრამ ეს არ წარმოადგენს რაიმე ერთიანობას.
Some books belong together, like books 13 and 14 belong together. Books 6, 7, and 8 belong together. Some books belong together, like 13 and 14. And 6, 7, 8 belong together. Yes. And other books are definitely individual works, like book 4. But all of these works have the same topic, which is the different aspects of how things exist. Now, Aristotle also wrote about physics. We have 8 books of Aristotle's physics. And the topic of physics is about the question of what things are made of, what things are made of ultimately. And everything related to the composition of things. Aristotle took over from Empedocles the famous four elements. So I hope you know that Empedocles believed that everything in the universe is made of four elements: fire, air, earth, and water. Empedocles, I gave you a chronology of early philosophers. Empedocles, so he was born about 495, died about 432. And believed that everything in the universe can be explained by the four elements: fire, air, earth, and water. And this theory continued to be accepted by most people up to the 17th century. So Plato believed that everything on earth is made of the four elements. And also Aristotle believed that everything on earth is made of the four elements. But Aristotle added a fifth element for everything in the sky. So the stars, the sun, the moon, everything in the sky is made of a fifth element, which he called ether. But metaphysics looks at the problem of being. There are two aspects to being. There is the question of why things are, and then how they can change. But for all Greek philosophers, the question of why things are is impossible to answer. The universe exists and there is no explanation. So for all Greek philosophers, there is no question of creation. In fact, for Greek philosophers, creation is a contradiction. The philosopher Parmenides who is also on your list, the philosopher Parmenides, said everything that is, and what is not, is not. So you cannot get something from nothing. So for Parmenides or for Aristotle, it's not even a question if something could come from nothing. It's impossible. So there is no question of creation in Greek philosophy. So the real question is the question of change. How is it possible for things to be what they are and also to change? For Plato, this was a very big problem. Because Plato was strongly influenced by the philosopher Heraclitus. Heraclitus is also on your list of philosophers. Heraclitus, philosopher from Ephesus. Ephesus on the west coast of Turkey today. And Heraclitus said, everything is changing all the time. Everything is changing all the time. Nothing is permanent, nothing is stable. And Plato agreed with this idea that everything is changing all the time. And so for Plato, there was no possibility of science of things in this world. Because science is something that does not change. Science gives permanent truth. And you cannot have permanent truth about something that's changing all the time. And so Plato concluded there must be another world. There must be a second world which is not changing. And this second world for Plato is a world of ideas. Ideas do not change. And so everything in this world, according to Plato, is just an imitation of the ideas in the other world. So the ideas are real, and the things in our world are not so real. The things in our world are changing all the time, so it's not possible for them to be fully real. So for Plato, we have two worlds. We have the world of ideas, which are real, and then we have the things in our world which are changing all the time and not fully real. Now, Plato had the idea of a god, and this god is called the demiurge. Do you know this word, or do we need to spell it? Maybe demiurge. Do you know it? Oh, you know it. Okay. The demiurge. So this is Plato's god, and the god of Plato did not create. He did not create. Because it's not possible to make something from nothing. So the god of Plato made use of matter, but this matter was in a state of chaos. And the god of Plato transformed the chaos into the things we have in our world. So the god of Plato placed order on the universe. He made the universe into a cosmos. And cosmos is the Greek word for order. Now, Aristotle was reacting to the teaching of his master Plato. The first thing for Aristotle was that he did not believe in another world of ideas. He thought it's not necessary to believe that there is a separate world of ideas. And Aristotle also believed that our world is real. So we need to explain how things can change and yet be real. So the problem of Aristotle's metaphysics is really the same problem of Parmenides. Parmenides caused a big crisis in Greek philosophy because he said that change is impossible. Because if things change, then they do not really exist. Something that really exists must be permanent. Aristotle will try to give an answer to this problem. How change is possible and yet things really exist. Aristotle is the first philosopher to have a word for things. And the word he uses for things is substance. So everything in the universe for Aristotle is a substance. Even God is a substance. And for Aristotle, in order to explain how everything can be and at the same time change, he uses two principles. The first principle is form. And form is the same really as Plato's ideas. But there's a difference because for Plato there's only one form of everything. Form or idea, for Plato is the same thing, form or idea. But for Aristotle, there can be many forms, but they are in the things themselves. So for Plato, there is only one form of a table. And this form is in the other world of ideas. But for Aristotle, there are many tables. And the form of a table is found in every table. The second principle in everything or substance is matter. And matter for Aristotle is like Plato's chaos. But there's a difference. For Aristotle, matter is found in each thing. And the matter makes each thing real. And at the same time, the matter makes it possible for something to change. So matter makes something real. You can see that because it's not the form that makes something real. It's not because you have the form or the idea of a table that you have a real table. It's when you have the material, then you have the material which takes the form, then you have a real table. But you cannot find real forms without matter. With one exception, which is God. And you cannot find matter without form. Because there is no matter that does not have a form. Every kind of matter you can identify as being something. Okay, so in each thing, in each substance, it is the form that tells us what it is. If I say table, that tells us what it is. And it is the matter that makes it real and able to change. So, in things we have form and matter combined. But there is no reason why one form should not leave the matter and another form take the place of that form. For example, if a cow eats some grass, then the grass will become cow, and you no longer have the form of grass, but the form of cow has taken the place of the form of grass. So one form can drive out another form. So Aristotle will tell us then that each thing is what it is now. So this table is a real table now, it exists fully. But of course it's possible to burn it or to break it up and it will be something different. But the matter does not disappear. The matter is just changed, so there is a new form. Now, there are also in every substance, in everything, there are also accidents. So every substance is what it is, but it also has many accidents in it. So Aristotle has 9 different kinds of accidents, but this is belongs more to the course of logic. But there are 9 different kinds of accident for Aristotle. There is the quantity, the quality, well, there are nine different kinds of accidents. So, for example, if I have a white wall and I paint the wall yellow, then the wall has not changed. Only the color of the wall has changed. So before the wall was white and now it's yellow. So the accident has not changed the substance. The form is still the same. So we have 2 kinds of change. We have a substantial change where the form is changed. And we have an accidental change where the form stays the same, but an accident changes. Accidents do not exist in themselves. The accidents always exist in a substance. So you cannot find a color white except in a substance. An accident is real, but it has no existence of its own. And so it's interesting that accidents are a little bit like Plato's forms. Because Aristotle's substances or things, they participate in accidents. For example, the white wall, the wall participates in the accident white. And if I paint the wall, then the wall does not change. It's only the color that changes. And so I can be looking at the wall, and 1 minute it is white, and half an hour later it is yellow. And I can judge that the the accident has not changed, because white cannot change or yellow cannot change. Yeah. But the substance participates in a different accident. So at one time, the substance will participate in one color, and then at another time I will judge that the wall participates in a different color. Now, Aristotle has a special word for the possibility of change. He calls it potentiality. So, the grass is really grass, but it is potentially cow. Because grass can become cow. So this word potentiality is something new in Aristotle. So every substance or thing in the universe, it is actually, that means it is what it is actually, or we can say it is in act. So it's the same thing, it is actually or it is in act. That means it really is what it is. But at the same time, it is potentially something different. It can change into something different. Okay. Now, for Aristotle, change is possible due to causes. And Aristotle believes in 4 causes. Aristotle is the founder of the theory of 4 causes. But the first 2 causes are not what we would usually call causes. Because they are the 2 principles that compose every substance. So form and matter. So form and matter are the 2 components of every substance. So they cause the existence of every substance. So we don't usually call the components of a substance the causes of a substance. if you are making a cake, you don't usually call the flour and the eggs the causes of the cake. But for Aristotle, they are causes, because without them, the cake would not be there. Now, the matter, we said, the matter is Aristotle's adaptation of Plato's chaos. So Plato is the first philosopher to have an idea of matter. Which is changed by Aristotle into his what he calls prime matter. So this matter is not the same as the elements, fire, air, earth and water. I'll talk about that in a minute. Then the second cause is form. And form, we said, is Aristotle's transformation of Plato's ideas. And Plato's ideas go back to Socrates. Because Socrates was the first philosopher to be interested in definitions. Socrates wanted to have a fixed definition of everything. Because he understood that without definitions we cannot have truth. And Socrates was very interested in permanent truth. Then Plato took the definitions of Socrates, but he believed they exist in another world. And then Aristotle believed that they exist in the individual substances on earth. Now, there are two more causes. The third cause is efficient causality. How do you translate efficient causality? Well, it's what we usually call a cause. Yeah. An efficient cause is what we usually call a cause. So if I push you and you fall down, then I am the cause why you fell down. So that is an efficient cause. So that is what we usually call a cause. Now, before Aristotle, there are two philosophers, three philosophers who believed in an efficient cause of the order in the universe. The first one is Empedocles. Empedocles believed that the universe is the result of two forces. And these two forces are love and hate. They are like a god and an anti-god. So this love and hate are fighting each other at all times in the universe. And the universe as we know it is the result of this conflict between love and hate. Then we have Anaxagoras, who is on your page of philosophers. Anaxagoras of Plazomine, born about 500, died about 428. And Anaxagoras believed that there is an intellect like a god. And this intellect caused the order of the universe. Then we talked about Plato. So Plato also had a god who ordered the universe. Making use of matter which existed already. But Aristotle does not believe in this kind of God. So I'll talk about the God of Aristotle in a minute. But the God of Aristotle does not intervene in the world. Then Aristotle has a fourth cause. And this fourth cause, a new cause, a cause that no philosopher thought of before Aristotle. And this is the final cause. You got it? Yes, the final cause. So, final cause is a cause that causes without moving itself. So, I'll give you an example. Before this class, I went into the supermarket next door and I saw some chocolate. And the chocolate was so good that it caused me to buy it. But the chocolate didn't move. But it caused me to buy it. So it caused me to buy it because of its goodness. So final causality is causality by goodness. So every time we act, we want to do something for a purpose. We have a purpose which appears good to us. And so this purpose or goal is the cause of our action. By final causality. It's a cause by final causality. And Aristotle's best example of final causality is the final causality of God. Because God is the good, the highest good. God is the highest good. Okay. Now, Aristotle is interested in being, but for Aristotle, not every being is of the same value. So there is non-living being, there are living beings, plants, animals, human beings, and then even more important than human beings are the heavenly bodies. The heavenly bodies, so the moon, the sun, the stars, yes, are the heavenly bodies, because for Aristotle, they are alive. And they are intelligent. However, for Aristotle, the heavenly bodies, they're not gods. This is different from Plato. For Plato, the heavenly bodies are gods. And Plato even believed that the earth is alive. The earth for Plato has a soul, and it is the greatest and best living being. But for Aristotle, the earth is not alive. It does not have a soul. And the earth is just the collection of all of the substances in the earth. But for Plato, the earth and the heavenly bodies are all gods. For Aristotle, the heavenly bodies, they are alive, they are intelligent, and they are divine. They are divine, but they're not gods. So this is a little bit difficult. You need to know that the word divine originally comes from the fact that early peoples were very surprised at the phenomena on Earth. For example, thunder and lightning, or volcanoes that erupted. Or the power of storms or of the sea. And early peoples thought that behind the powers of the universe, which they could not control, they thought there were gods. But the word divine came before the idea of a god. So the word divine means very surprising. Something that inspires you with fear and awe. Yes. So then the early Greeks believed that there are many gods behind the powers of nature. And this belief in many gods continues right up to Plato. The philosophers thought about it. The philosopher Xenophanes Xenophanes, who is also on your list of philosophers, Xenophanes of Colophon, born about 570, died about 470. He tried to purify the idea of the gods, and possibly thought there is one God superior to the other gods. Also, Socrates tried to purify the idea of the gods. He believed that many stories about the gods in mythology are unworthy. they're not worthy, they're not correct for the gods. The gods should act well. And Plato believed in one God who ordered the universe, but he also believed in many gods who were the stars, the heavenly bodies. And also the earth, which is the greatest God under the one God. So when we come to Aristotle, we see that he believed in that the heavenly bodies are alive and intelligent, and they are divine but not gods. And Aristotle also did not believe in the many gods of mythology. He did not believe in the religion of the people of his time. But he did believe in a God, in one God. So this God is the highest object of metaphysics, because this God is the best being. And this God is pure form, with no matter, because God is unchanging. And matter is necessary for change. Now, the God of Aristotle is famous as the unmoved mover. So Aristotle believed that there must be a first cause of movement. Of course, in his time, the view of the world was different to our view. So we know that everything is changing all the time. Even this table, which appears to be unchanging, if we take a microscope, we can see there are changes. But in ancient times, it seemed that if something moved, there must be a cause of the movement. So for Aristotle, it was necessary for there to be a cause of movement. And this cause of movement cannot itself be moved, because then it would also need to be explained. And so the cause of movement cannot be physical, and therefore can only be an intellect. So the God of Aristotle is intellectual, and Aristotle asks the question then, is this God living or not living?
Aristoteles wants to pass his
and he answers, yes, this God is living, and therefore the only activity of God can be thinking. Now, the reasoning for thinking that God is living is because God is the good. Okay. God is the good. Now, Aristotle believes that also everything on earth is living. And this is a little bit surprising, because he believes that even what is not living is living in a way. So, of course, there is a difference between what is alive and what is not alive. But even non-living things, in a way, have a kind of life. So non-living things strive to go to their proper place. Aristotle did not have the idea of gravity. So he believed that heavy things want to go down and light things want to go up. So water and earth belong down, and fire and air belong up. Because this is their proper place. So they actually desire to go to their proper place. So you might ask me, well, how is this possible? How can non-living things desire? And the answer is because they have in them a principle of soul in general. Aristotle calls it soul principle. Yeah, soul principle. So this is not the soul of a living thing, but it's just a kind of soul in general. We can compare it with the soul of the world for Plato. So you remember I told you for Plato the world is the greatest and most beautiful living being, and it's alive with a soul. So for Aristotle, non-living things have this kind of soul in general, like the world soul of Plato. Yes. This theory is also called the theory of hylozoism. Yeah. Hylozoism. Hylozoism, yes. So hylo comes from the Greek word for matter, and zoe is the Greek word for life. So hylozoism, the theory that matter is alive. And all of the Greek philosophers from the start all believed that in this hylozoism, that matter is alive. In a way. So, for Aristotle then, matter desires to go to its proper place. Because that is the best place for it. And living things also desire what is best for them. So living things desire to achieve their full development. The acorn desires to become a fully grown oak tree. Acorn is a small, yeah, you have oak trees, I'm sure, in Georgia. No? Yeah. Or a chestnut. Chestnut desires to become a fully grown. Yeah. Okay. Yes. So every living thing desires its full development. It also desires to stay in its best condition permanently. And Aristotle says that this is a desire for the goodness of God and the eternity of God. Because living things, they are limited, of course, by their form. But the best they can do is achieve their full form and stay in their best condition. So we have non-living things desire what is good for them, their natural place. Living things desire what is best for them, their fully developed form and their permanence. And also the heavenly bodies desire what is best for them. So the heavenly bodies, according to Aristotle, move in a perfect circle. No, Aristotle. Also for Plato, yes. But yes. The heavenly bodies move in a perfect circle. And this is an interesting aspect of ancient philosophy. The ancient philosophers were all very optimistic. very few people in our time would think we are living in a perfect world. But all of the ancient philosophers believed we are living in a perfect world. Yeah. And Aristotle believed that it was better for the heavenly bodies to move in a perfect circle than to move not in a perfect circle. And even though the ancient philosophers and astronomers could see that the planets do not move in a perfect circle, but because the world must be perfect, yeah, they decided that there must be a way to explain how they really do move in a perfect circle. And so Aristotle asked the advice of leading astronomers of his time. And he asked how many heavenly bodies, extra heavenly bodies, do we need in order to make the planets move in a perfect circle? And he was given the answer 55. 55 extra heavenly bodies are necessary, even though we cannot see them. And he concludes that the planets move from one invisible sphere to another one. So that in reality, the heavenly bodies are moving in a perfect circle. And the heavenly bodies are, of course, eternal. They are eternal, they always were, always will be. Yes. Because in ancient times, nobody knew that how old the universe is. They believed the universe was eternal. And so the heavenly bodies must be superior to human beings because they are eternal. And therefore they must be alive and intelligent. And the question is then, what are the heavenly bodies doing, moving in a perfect circle? And the answer is that the heavenly bodies are striving to get as near to God as possible. So this is interesting because it shows that Aristotle thought that God is in a place. So the heavenly bodies, they are moving in a perfect circle. They are trying to get near to God. But because they are all in a kind of sphere, like we could imagine a glass bowl in the sky. A glass bowl. Yes, a glass bowl in the sky. They are not able to get any nearer to God. So every time they move around in a circle, and when they get near to God, because there is nothing to stop them, they move around again. And so they move around and around eternally. So we see that everything in the universe is striving for the best thing it can achieve. The non-living things, the living things, the heavenly bodies, they are all striving for the good. And so this good, according to Aristotle, that is God. So for Aristotle, God is not just the first cause of movement, but also God is the good. So therefore God is alive, and because he is the good, therefore he must be doing the best activity. Which is thinking. And the question then is, what is God thinking about? And Aristotle answers that God must think the best object of thought. If God is the best, if he is the good, he cannot think about something that is not so good. And therefore, God does not think about the world. Because the world is not as good as himself. And therefore he thinks only about himself. And of course, many authors have accused Aristotle of making God selfish. Certainly, a human being who thinks only about himself is very selfish. So the question is it a selfish God? Aristotle would not think so. Because he thinks that God is thinking about the best object, and what is wrong with thinking about the best object? So God is thinking, and he's thinking about his thinking. So this is a very famous phrase in Aristotle: God's thinking is a thinking of thinking. Also a very influential phrase, it is the last words of Hegel's Encyclopedia of Philosophy. was also ended with the same words. He quotes Aristotle. So God then is the final cause of movement. We said there are four causes, and the fourth cause, the final cause, is caused by goodness. So God's causality is final causality. Now, we might look at the origin of Aristotle's metaphysics. So you remember that in ancient philosophy there is a tradition that starts with the first philosopher is Dadlis, who says everything is water. Dadlis is a philosopher because he gives a more rational answer to the question of what everything is than mythology. In mythology, mythology is also rational, but it's not as rational as Dadlis. Mythology, yes. Okay, it's and also so Dadlis gives an answer to which is more rational and also uses less imagination than mythology. So the tradition of Dadlis is continued by Anaximenes, who says everything is air. Everything is air, so I don't need to explain it. I think you know it already. Everything is air. You know that air evaporates, or rain comes out of the sky, so water comes from air. Water freezes, so ice can come from water and become hard. You learned it already. And Anaximenes thinks he has improved the theory of Thales also because air is more divine than water. You cannot see air, so it is more divine. And also air is infinite because it goes up infinitely high in the sky. Okay, and then the next person in this tradition is Heraclitus, says everything is made of fire. Everything is made of fire because everything comes from fire, everything is sooner or later burnt up. And also fire is very divine because the divine is unpredictable and God is unpredictable. Then the next person in this tradition is Empedocles. We mentioned him already. We founded the theory of 4 elements. So believes everything is made of fire, air, earth, and water. Okay, and then the next philosopher, Anaxagoras, believes there are little bits of everything in everything. Yes, okay, the theory of homeomeria, there are little bits of everything in everything. And the last person in this tradition is Democritus, who believes everything is made of atoms. So these philosophers all belong to one tradition, because they all give what Aristotle calls the material cause. So the material cause tells you what things are made of. And Aristotle says it's not enough to say what things are made of. That doesn't tell you what they are. And then in early philosophy we have a second tradition which starts maybe with Anaximander. So Anaximander is the second philosopher from the city of Miletus on the west coast of Turkey. And Anaximander says everything is made of or comes from the infinite. In Greek the word is apeiron, so the infinite or the indefinite. So you can see this is a different explanation. It's not like water or air or fire. It's a different kind of explanation. Then the next person in a similar tradition is Pythagoras. Pythagoras from the island of Samos, off the coast of Turkey today. And Pythagoras says everything is numbers. He was very impressed by the power of numbers. And as you know, he was a great mathematician himself. And he says not just everything can be explained with numbers, no, everything is numbers. So So this is quite an extraordinary thing to say, that everything is numbers. So again, this is quite a different tradition to saying that everything is water or air or fire. Water, air, fire, these are material things. But the infinite or numbers, these are abstractions. And then we have, in the same tradition, we have Parmenides, the philosopher Parmenides, who says everything is being. Everything is, and nothing is not. So being, it's also not something material. Being is something abstract, maybe abstract. It seems to be the same kind of tradition as Anaximander and Pythagoras. And then we have Plato, who says, well, everything is ideas. The real things are ideas. But again, ideas are abstractions. So the question then is, when we look at the metaphysics of Aristotle, which tradition does it belong to? Well, I think the answer is clear. Yeah. It looks like Aristotle's metaphysics belongs to the second tradition. And in fact, he is very critical of the first tradition. So he says it's not enough to give the material cause. So his metaphysics is explanation not by the material cause, it's explanation not by the material cause. So the question is, what should we think about Aristotle's metaphysics, about his form and matter? So first of all, if we take form, Aristotle says there is real form in everything that exists. But is there real form in everything that exists? What should we think? And also, the question we have to ask is, Aristotle says that real things are made of form and matter, but you cannot find the two separately. So I asked myself the question, you know, if I take water, water, as we know, is made of H2O. So hydrogen and oxygen. H2O. Yes. So H2O, but hydrogen is real and oxygen is real. Of course, it's interesting that hydrogen is a gas and oxygen is a gas. Yeah, but you put the two together and you have water. Okay, but the elements that make water are real. And you can find them separately. But what about form and matter? Can you find them? Can you find them separately? Well, Aristotle says no. You cannot find form separately, and you cannot find matter separately. But put them together, and you have real things. So the question is whether this is a good explanation of reality. Well, I have some ideas about this question. Maybe it belongs to a different class, but I'll talk about it a little bit more about it later. But matter, certainly, I don't see why we can't use real matter, like the elements. But of course, there is the problem that every time I see something in matter, like I see a table or I see something small like an atom, but every time it always has a form. So I cannot see something that does not have a form. So in order to know something, I need to impose a form on it. So maybe this brings us a little closer to the answer. Maybe the forms are coming from us. So when I want to examine some matter, a form will come from my intellect to understand the matter. So maybe this is part of the answer, but I am not Aristotle. But I think it's important for you to think about this question. Okay. Now, I want to show you some, we have 5 minutes. I want to show you some photos, and maybe you have a question or two. So just something that you might be interested to see, because I was just recently, I was in Turkey. So this is the way to the first philosopher's home, Miletos. So this is the road to Miletos. And here is Miletos. And you can see the shadow of Dudley taking the photo. That's the theater. Ah, there he is. So that's the remains of the city. It used to be a harbor. So the ships came in. You could see the ships coming in from the theater. That's the back of the city. This is not the right one. This is not the right one. Okay. That is Miletos, where philosophy started. And yes, I think maybe we stop at this one. Maybe we have talked enough. Anybody have any question or so? Anyone like to ask a question?